There's something about the unseen, the divine, that has always pulled at the edges of human curiosity, like a whisper just beyond hearing, a shadow flickering at the corner of vision. For as long as we've told stories, we've woven tales of gods walking among us, of miracles etched into the bedrock of history, and of sacred places humming with power we can't quite explain. These aren't just legends, they're echoes of something deeper, moments where the line between myth and reality blurs so completely that we're left wondering, what if the divine didn't just inspire these stories? What if it shaped them? Picture this: a temple carved into a mountainside, its walls covered in symbols no one alive today can fully decipher, or an artifact unearthed after centuries, radiating an energy that defies modern science. These aren't scenes from a fantasy novel, they're fragments of our own world, waiting to be pieced together. Across continents and cultures, amid the ruins of forgotten civilizations and the hushed lore of secret societies, there are 30 stories so enigmatic, so charged with mystery, that they challenge everything we think we know about the past. Stories where history doesn't just hint at the divine, it reaches out and grasps it. This is a journey into those shadows where the sacred and the unexplained collide. We'll wander through ancient sites where the air still thrums with the presence of something older than memory, decode messages left behind by those who claim to speak for the gods, and follow the trails of artifacts that vanish as quickly as they appear. Some of these tales are centuries old, others are still unfolding, their truths hidden in plain sight. But one thread ties them all together: the unshakable sense that we're not just uncovering history, we're brushing against something far greater. So take a step closer, listen for the whispers in the ruins. The divine isn't just a story, it's waiting to be found. Of all the sacred relics lost to time, none has captured the imagination or sparked the obsession like the Ark of the Covenant. This wasn't just a golden box adorned with angels. According to ancient texts, it was a conduit for divine power itself, capable of leveling mountains and striking down armies. The Bible describes it as the vessel that held the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, a physical link between heaven and earth. But after the fall of Jerusalem, it vanished without a trace, or did it? One of the most enduring theories points to Ethiopia, where the Orthodox Church claims the Ark has been safeguarded for centuries in the sacred city of Axum. The story goes that Menelik, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, smuggled it out of Jerusalem, and it's been hidden ever since in a chapel guarded by a single monk, sworn to protect it until the end of days. Skeptics dismiss this as legend, but Ethiopian tradition insists. The Ark's presence explains the country's unbroken line of Christian faith, even when surrounded by empires that sought to crush it. Then there are the whispers beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount, where some believe the Ark was secretly hidden before Babylon's invasion. Explorers and archaeologists have probed the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the ancient city, hoping to find clues in the damp, echoing passages. But the deeper you dig, the stranger the stories become. Accounts of electromagnetic anomalies, of researchers who vanished mid-expedition, even warnings from religious authorities about disturbing something not meant to be found. What if the Ark wasn't just lost but actively concealed? Some scholars suggest its power was too volatile, too dangerous to leave in human hands. The Bible recounts how mere contact with the Ark could be fatal, a warning that echoes in modern accounts of those who claim to have gotten too close. Whether it rests in an Ethiopian chapel deep beneath Jerusalem or somewhere else entirely, one thing is clear: the Ark of the Covenant isn't just a relic of the past. It's a mystery that refuses to stay buried. The Holy Grail isn't just a cup, it's a mirror reflecting whatever the seeker most desires. To medieval knights, it was the sacred vessel that caught the blood of Christ, a treasure so pure it could heal kingdoms. To conspiracy theorists, it's a bloodline, a secret lineage of divine royalty hidden in plain sight. and to historians, it's a riddle tangled in centuries of folklore, crusader lore, and architectural symbolism. But one thing binds all these threads together, the unshakable idea that the Grail isn't just a legend. It's a trail, one that leads through candlelit chapels, encrypted manuscripts, and the very heart of Europe's power struggles. Take Valencia Cathedral, where a simple agate chalice rests in a beam of golden light. Carbon dated to between 300 BCE and 100 CE, this cup has been venerated as the true Grail since the 15th century, gifted to the Spanish Church by a pope who believed its origins were divine. Pilgrims still flock to see it, drawn by the tantalizing possibility that this humble artifact might be the very cup from the Last Supper. But Valencia's claim is just one thread in a far older tapestry. Travel north to Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel, and the Grail takes on a different shape, not a cup, but a code. Built by the enigmatic Sinclair family in the 15th century, the chapel's walls drip with carvings that whisper of hidden knowledge. Maize plants carved decades before Columbus sailed, symbolism tying back to the Knights Templar, even a pillar said to conceal the Grail itself. Some researchers argue Rosslyn isn't hiding a physical object, but a secret, the survival of Christ's bloodline through medieval Europe's royal houses. This theory, popularized by modern lore, suggests the Grail is actually sangreal, or royal blood. An idea that sparked everything from best-selling novels to fevered debates among historians. Then there's the darker side of the hunt. During the Crusades, European knights ransacked Jerusalem's holy sites, convinced the Grail lay hidden beneath them. Chroniclers wrote of soldiers who claimed to glimpse it in visions, only to vanish in the desert days later. Even the Templars, that infamous order of warrior monks, were accused of worshipping the Grail as part of their forbidden rites, a charge that may have sealed their doom. The truth, the Grail's power wasn't just in its form, but in its promise, a divine connection so potent it could crown kings or topple empires. So is the Grail a relic, a bloodline, or a metaphor? Perhaps it's all three. Because whether carved into chapel walls or whispered in Crusader chronicles, the stories share one spine-chilling undercurrent. Someone, somewhere, believed the divine wasn't just a story. It was a legacy, one they'd kill to protect or die to uncover. Deep in the heart of India's sacred landscapes, where devotion and mystery intertwine, stand two marvels that defy rational explanation. The first, the Jyotirlingas, 12 self-manifested pillars of light revered as embodiments of Lord Shiva himself. These aren't carved by human hands, they are said to have erupted from the earth, pulsating with a primal energy that blurs the line between the divine and the tangible. Pilgrims whisper of visions in their presence, of a light so pure it etches itself into memory. But the most haunting detail, scientific studies have detected anomalous electromagnetic fields around these sites, as if the stones themselves are conducting an invisible current. At the Varanasi Kashi Vishwanath temple, one of the most revered Jyotirlingas rests beneath a canopy of gold and silver. Here, priests perform ancient rituals not just as worship, but as a kind of cosmic maintenance, a belief that the Lingam's energy sustains the very balance of the universe. Witnesses describe a heat that radiates from the stone even in winter, and locals swear the Lingam grows heavier during certain lunar phases. Skeptics call it folklore, but when researchers from India's Banaras Hindu University measured subtle fluctuations in radiation levels around the site, even they couldn't dismiss the anomaly outright. Now shift south to the hills of Tirumala, where another enigma floats literally. The idol of Lord Venkateswara, a form of Vishnu, stands atop a pedestal that defies gravity's grip. Tradition claims this 8th century sculpture has hovered a finger's width above its base for over 1,000 years, never touching the ground. Devotees speak of a faint hum in the air around it, a vibration that lingers long after prayers end. When a team of engineers discreetly scanned the idol with ground-penetrating radar, they found no hidden mechanisms, just a hollow space beneath the stone, as if it was suspended by an unseen force. The contrast between these two wonders is as striking as their shared mystique. Shiva's Lingams channel raw, untamed energy, a force of destruction and creation. Vishnu's floating stone exudes serene defiance, a silent rebuke to the laws of physics. Yet both are tended with rituals so precise they border on alchemy. At Tirumala, priests anoint the idol with sacred camphor, and witnesses swear the flame burns without smoke, as if feeding on something beyond oxygen. In Varanasi, offerings of milk poured over the lingam vanish faster than science can explain, absorbed like water into parched earth. Are these miracles or sophisticated ancient technology? Faith or forgotten physics? Perhaps the answer lies in the way these sites refuse to fit neatly into either category. They exist in the liminal space between devotion and evidence, where the divine doesn't just inspire awe, it challenges understanding. And that's the heart of their power, not in proving the supernatural, but in reminding us that some mysteries are meant to be felt, not solved. In the quiet glow of dawn at Sri Lanka's Temple of the Tooth, monks chant over a golden casket said to hold something impossible, a relic that refused to burn. According to tradition, when the Buddha was cremated in the 5th century BCE, his body left behind pearls of crystallized bone that resisted the flames. These sacred fragments, called sharira, scattered across Asia, becoming some of the most venerated objects in Buddhist history, but none carry the weight or the drama of the Dalada Mulagawa Shrine's prized possession, the Buddha's left canine tooth. History tells us this relic shouldn't exist. In the 16th century, Portuguese colonizers, determined to erase what they saw as pagan idolatry, stormed the temple, seized the tooth, and according to their own records, pulverized it before tossing the dust into a river. Yet within weeks, pilgrims reported the tooth miraculously reappearing in its shrine, whole and untouched. The Portuguese governor, fearing divine retribution, ordered a second destruction, only for the relic to materialize again. To this day, scientists who have examined the tooth note its unnatural density and peculiar resistance to decay, as if it exists outside ordinary time. The political firestorm around this tiny relic reveals its deeper power. For centuries, Sri Lankan kings built their legitimacy around guarding the tooth, believing its presence ensured their right to rule. Wars were fought over it, dynasties rose and fell by its perceived favor. Even now, the temple's annual Azala Parahara procession draws thousands, where the tooth's golden casket is paraded through streets on elephants, a spectacle blending devotion and raw state authority. Monks whisper that when the relic's glow dims, trouble follows, a superstition that proved eerily accurate during the country's civil war. Across the continent, similar miracles cling to other sharira. In China's Feimin Temple, a finger bone relic survived the Tang dynasty's anti-Buddhist purges by vanishing underground, only to reappear centuries later beneath a pagoda that collapsed conveniently, just as archaeologists arrived. In Myanmar, the Kyaiktiyo Pagoda balances a golden boulder on a cliff's edge, said to be held in place by a single hair of the Buddha. These aren't just objects of worship, they're living paradoxes, physical anchors to a philosophy that teaches detachment from the material world. What makes these relics so indestructible? Faith would say they're infused with the Buddha's enlightenment, transcending earthly laws. Science might point to advanced preservation techniques lost to history, or collective belief so strong it reshapes reality. But perhaps the true miracle is how something as fragile as a tooth could outlast empires, outwit conquerors, and ignite devotion across millennia. The flames couldn't consume it. Neither could time. Beneath the dry earth of China's Henan province, farmers once plowed up fragments of bone that cracked like thunder under their tools. Not just animal remains, but artifacts inscribed with symbols so ancient they seemed to whisper from the dawn of civilization itself. These were the oracle bones of the Shang dynasty, carved over 3,200 years ago to bridge the gap between kings and gods. Imagine holding one, the surface rough with heat cracks, the grooves of archaic script pressing into your fingertips like a message waiting to be decoded. These weren't mere records, they were conversations with the divine where the fate of dynasties hinged on the way fire split turtle shells. The ritual was as precise as it was mystical. Shang rulers would pose questions to their ancestors: will the harvest succeed? Should we go to war? Then press red-hot bronze rods into cleaned ox scapulae or turtle plastrons. The resulting cracks were read like celestial Morse code by diviners, their interpretations etched beside the fractures in the earliest known form of Chinese writing. What's staggering isn't just the spiritual weight of these acts, but how they birthed a writing system still in use today. One bone might bear the first embryonic characters for rain or disaster, their angular strokes evolving over millennia into modern Mandarin. But the oracle bones hold darker prophecies too. In one chilling example, a diviner recorded cracks suggesting impending betrayal, a warning that aligned with historical accounts of the Shang's bloody collapse. Another bone describes celestial omens so dire, the king ordered mass sacrifices to avert calamity. Modern linguists have pieced together how these cracks weren't random. Certain patterns reliably signaled auspicious or disastrous, suggesting an almost scientific method to the mysticism. The real shock came in the early 20th century when scholars realized local pharmacies had been grinding these dragon bones into traditional medicine for centuries. Thousands of fragments were lost before historians rescued over 50,000 inscribed pieces, each a puzzle piece in reconstructing China's Bronze Age. Today, infrared imaging reveals faded inscriptions unseen to the naked eye, while AI algorithms cross-reference crack patterns to decode lost divinations. What echoes from these bones isn't just the voice of a dead empire, it's the moment humanity first tried to pin the butterfly of fate to the page. The Shang believed the gods spoke in fractures. We now understand they were also speaking in the birth of language itself. Every time you read a character, you're tracing the shadow of a 3,000-year-old fire. In the rugged mountains of Greece, where the air hummed with the scent of laurel and burnt offerings, two sanctuaries pulsed with divine whispers, but in ways so different they seemed to channel separate gods altogether. At Delphi, the Pythia perched atop a tripod above a chasm, her body trembling as vapors rose from the earth's belly. Ancient texts describe her convulsions, the way her voice dropped into a guttural register, syllables tumbling out in a language only priests could untangle. Modern geologists have since discovered ethylene gas seeping from the limestone beneath the temple, a sweet-smelling anesthetic known to induce euphoria and disjointed speech. Was this the breath of Apollo, a chemical key to the divine? Pilgrims certainly thought so. Kings and peasants alike journeyed for days, bearing gifts to hear her riddles which carried the weight of fate. Go to war and you will destroy a great empire. The empire, it turned out, was their own. The Pythia's words were never wrong, just brutally malleable, like prophecy itself. Now travel northwest to Dodona, where the divine spoke not through a woman but through the wind. Here, Zeus' voice rustled in the leaves of a sacred oak grove, interpreted by barefoot priests called Seloi, who slept on the ground and listened for omens in the creak of branches. Bronze gongs hung from the trees, their vibrations believed to carry the god's will. Unlike Delphi's frenzied spectacle, Dodona's prophecies were slow, organic, a conversation with nature itself. Historians speculate the Seloi were tracking subtle shifts in wind patterns, a kind of ancient meteorology that predicted droughts or storms, but to the faithful it was pure magic. When Alexander the Great visited before his conquest, the grove's whispers assured him he was the son of Zeus. The gongs rang without touch, the leaves shivered in still air. The contrast between these oracles reveals a duality at the heart of Greek spirituality. Delphi was theater, a performance of possession, a high-stakes drama where ambiguity was the price of truth. Dodona was poetry, its prophecies woven into the natural world, demanding patience and quietude. Yet both shared an eerie precision. Archaeologists unearthed thousands of lead tablets at Dodona, each bearing questions scratched by supplicants. Should I marry? Or will my stolen goods be found? The answers, though lost, were said to be uncannily accurate. At Delphi, the ruins still echo with the Pythia's most infamous reply to Croesus, the wealthy king who asked if he should attack Persia. If you cross the river Holys, a great empire will fall. He did, it did, his own. What made these sites so potent wasn't just their predictions, it was their grip on the human psyche. Delphi thrived on paradox, its prophecies coiled like snakes, striking only in hindsight. Dodona offered a gentler mysticism where divinity lived in every gust and birdsong. Together, they framed a worldview where the gods weren't just watching, they were speaking. All you had to do was learn how to listen. From the scorched plains of Peru's Nazca Desert, enormous figures stretch across the earth, not carved but scraped into existence by hands that remove the dark surface stones to reveal the pale substrate beneath. These aren't mere drawings, they're a desert code, etched on such a colossal scale that their full forms only resolve from the air, a hummingbird with wings spanning over 100 feet. A spider so precise, its legs mirror the anatomy of a real arachnid only visible under magnification, a spiraling monkey whose tail coils like a celestial timeline. To walk among them is to tread on a question. How and why did a civilization with no known aerial technology create art meant to be seen from the heavens? One theory whispers of celestial maps. The Nazca lines align with solstices and constellations, their shapes mirroring star patterns visible during seasonal rains. The spider, for instance, may represent Orion, a constellation linked to water in Andean cosmology. The straight lines crisscrossing the desert. Some researchers propose their ritual pathways walked by shamans during ceremonies to summon life-giving rain. In a land where water was rarer than gold, these geoglyphs could have been prayers etched into the earth itself, a dialogue with deities who controlled the rains. Then there's the shamanic flight hypothesis. Anthropologists point to Nazca pottery depicting figures hovering above the ground, their bodies entwined with vines or ropes as if mid-ascent. Local traditions speak of ritual intoxication using hallucinogenic brews, allowing spiritual leaders to fly and commune with the gods. Could the lines be traces of these aerial journeys meant to guide the shaman's visions? The desert's flat, sound-reflecting surface even creates an eerie acoustic phenomenon. Certain areas amplify footsteps into resonant hums, as if the earth itself is singing beneath your feet. But the most haunting clue lies beneath the surface. Satellite imaging reveals hidden tunnels and aqueducts snaking below the geoglyphs, part of an ancient hydraulic system that funneled water from underground rivers. The Nazca didn't just draw their gods, they engineered them. The spider, a creature that senses vibrations, might symbolize their ability to listen for water in the earth. The hummingbird, a pollinator, could represent the delicate balance they sought to maintain. Yet for all our theories, the desert keeps its secrets. Modern attempts to replicate the lines using primitive tools have failed to match their precision. The Nazca left no written records, only these sprawling messages in the sand, messages that seem to shift meaning depending on the angle of the sun, the time of year, the height from which you view them. Perhaps that's the point. These aren't just images or maps. They're an invitation to look beyond what's visible, to step into a world where the earth and sky were one continuous canvas, and the divine was something you could walk across. Hidden beneath layers of myth and metaphor, the emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus claims to hold the secret of creation itself, a truth so potent it's been guarded, stolen, and sought by alchemists for over 1,000 years. Imagine a single slab of green stone, etched with just 14 cryptic lines, yet dense enough to bend the minds of history's greatest thinkers. Its most famous axiom, as above, so below, isn't just poetry. It's a key, one that unlocks a world view where the cosmos and the earthly realm mirror each other in perfect harmony. But to understand its power, you have to follow its journey from the sands of ancient Egypt to the candlelit studies of medieval Europe, where it became the Rosetta Stone of the occult. The tablet's origins are shrouded in deliberate mystery. Some say Hermes Trismegistus, a figure blending the Egyptian god Thoth with the Greek Hermes, penned it before the Great Flood, hiding it in a tomb beneath the pyramids. Others argue it surfaced in 8th century Arabia, where Muslim scholars translated it into Arabic, calling it the Kitab Sir al-Asrar, or Book of the Secret of Secrets. This version caught fire in Baghdad's House of Wisdom, inspiring alchemists like Jabir ibn Hayyan, who used its principles to lay the foundations of chemistry. His experiments with distillation and crystallization weren't just practical. They were spiritual acts, attempts to purify the soul as one purifies lead into gold. By the 12th century, the tablet had slipped into Europe through Moorish Spain, where Christian monks pored over its verses like cryptographers. To them, it wasn't just about transforming metals, it was about transcending the human condition. The phrase, "as above, so below," became a mantra, suggesting that the patterns of the stars governed the rhythms of life on Earth. Medieval diagrams show the human body superimposed over the zodiac, each organ linked to a planet, the heart to the sun, the brain to the moon. This wasn't mere astrology, it was a roadmap implying that by understanding celestial forces, one could manipulate matter itself. Then came Isaac Newton. Yes, the father of gravity spent more time decoding the emerald tablet than he did on calculus. His handwritten translations, filled with fevered marginalia, reveal a man obsessed with uncovering the tablet's recipe for the philosopher's stone, the legendary substance said to grant immortality. Newton believed the tablet's symbols concealed the prima materia, the raw essence of the universe, and that its instructions for separating the earth from fire described a literal alchemical process. Modern chemists scoff, but Newton's notebooks show eerie parallels between his experiments and quantum physics' wave-particle duality. Was he chasing fantasy or glimpsing truth science is still unraveling? The tablet's legacy pulses in unexpected places. Carl Jung saw it as a blueprint for the collective unconscious, where microcosm and macrocosm reflect each other in dreams and archetypes. Silicon Valley tech gurus riff on its principles to explain fractal algorithms and holographic universes. Even the structure of DNA, with its mirrored double helix, feels like a biological echo of "as above, so below." So is the Emerald Tablet a divine revelation, an ancient scientific treatise, or a riddle designed to awaken intuition? Its genius lies in resisting easy answers. Every generation reads it anew, seeing in its emerald lines whatever they're prepared to understand. And maybe that's the real secret. The tablet isn't a guidebook to the universe. It's a mirror. Rising from the wheat fields of northern France, Chartres Cathedral isn't just an architectural marvel, it's a celestial equation carved in stone. Every arch, every stained glass panel, every labyrinthine twist of its floor seems to hum with a hidden geometry, as if the builders weren't just constructing a church but transcribing the language of angels into mortar and light. Medieval scribes claimed the cathedral's design was divinely inspired, based on sacred measurements handed down from heaven. Modern researchers have found something stranger. The proportions align with the golden ratio, Pythagorean harmonics, and even the dimensions of Solomon's temple. Walk its nave and you're tracing a blueprint older than Christianity itself, one that whispers of lost knowledge woven into the very fabric of the sacred. The most haunting evidence lies in the cathedral's labyrinth, an intricate circular path embedded in the floor, once trodden by pilgrims on their knees. Unlike other medieval mazes, Chartres' version follows a precise 11-circuit pattern that mirrors the folds of the human brain. Neuroscientists speculate this wasn't accidental. The act of walking its winding path may induce a meditative state, aligning the pilgrim's consciousness with the building's hidden frequencies. Even the stained glass behaves unnaturally. The famous Blue Virgin window uses a cobalt pigment whose chemical composition defies 12th century glassmaking techniques, glowing with an otherworldly luminescence when the summer solstice light hits at just the right angle. Some suggest the craftsman worked with scientia sacra, sacred science passed down from Egypt or the Templars, encoding celestial mechanics into colored light. Yet just a day's journey south, an entirely different face of the divine gazes back at worshippers, the Black Madonnas. These dark-skinned statues of the Virgin Mary, found in crypts and side chapels across Europe, carry an aura of paradox. Their ebony faces and hands, often weathered to an almost obsidian sheen, clash with conventional depictions of Mary as pale and ethereal. Art historians argue the hue comes from centuries of candle soot or the natural darkening of lead-based paints, but folklore tells a different story. In the French town of Rocamadour, locals insist their Madonna was carved from Lebanese cedar by the prophet Jeremiah himself, dark as the earth it sprang from. In Poland's Cieszesztyczawa, the legend goes deeper. The icon's darkened skin bears the scars of Tartar arrows that miraculously bled when struck, merging Mary's suffering with that of the land. The connection to pre-Christian goddesses is unmistakable. Many Black Madonnas occupy sites once sacred to Isis, Cybele, or Diana, their cults seamlessly absorbed into Marian veneration. In Chartres' own crypt lies one such statue, Notre Dame de Sous-Terre, Our Lady Underground, perched above an ancient well where Druids once worshipped a virgin and child goddess. Pilgrims still lower cloths into the water to soak up its healing properties, a ritual unchanged for millennia. The Virgin's dark skin here isn't just pigment, it's memory, echoing the fertile black soil of the earth and the primal darkness of the womb. These two faces of the sacred Chartres' luminous geometry and the Black Madonna's shadowed grace form a dialectic as old as spirituality itself. One reaches skyward, mapping heaven's harmonies in stone and glass. The other roots itself in the earth, a reminder that the divine isn't always light, but often dwells in the rich, dark places where life begins. Together, they ask, is divinity a celestial algorithm or the whisper of something older, deeper, and far more mysterious? Perhaps the answer lies in the way pilgrims still flock to both, drawn not by dogma, but by the ineffable pull of what these sacred spaces awaken in the soul. In the ancient hymns of the Rig Veda, the god Indra wields a weapon unlike any other, the Vajra, a thunderbolt scepter forged from the bones of a sage who sacrificed his own body to ensure its creation. This wasn't just a symbol of divine authority. It was a celestial tool capable of splitting mountains, drying rivers, and striking down demons with a crack of cosmic energy. The story begins with Dadhichi, a hermit so steeped in meditation that his very skeleton became indestructible. When the gods begged him for aid against the serpentine demon Vritra, Dadhichi dissolved his flesh in a river of sacred water, leaving only his bones behind. From these, the divine craftsman Tivashtri shaped the Vajra, its jagged lightning form humming with the sage's concentrated Tapa's spiritual heat so intense it could manifest as physical power. The parallels to other thunder gods are uncanny. Indra's Vajra mirrors Zeus's lightning bolts, Thor's Mjolnir, and even the storm weapons of Mesopotamian deities. But the Vedic texts go further, describing the Vajra with unsettling specificity. It could be thrown or held, emitted blinding flashes, and made a sound like the roaring of 1,000 bulls. Some scholars suggest these accounts aren't just mythic embellishments but dim memories of advanced technology. The Mahabharata's descriptions of divine weapons, some sounding eerily like plasma beams or sonic projectiles, hint at a lost science where spiritual energy and physical force blurred. Modern experiments add fuel to the mystery. In a lab, scientists have recreated mini lightning bolts using electromagnetic fields, and Tesla's work on directed energy weapons eerily echoes the Vajra's alleged capabilities. Could the ancients have stumbled upon a way to harness atmospheric electricity? The Vajra's name itself offers a clue. It translates simultaneously to diamond, thunderbolt, and indestructible, suggesting a material both crystalline and conductive. Ancient Indian metallurgists were known to produce high-carbon steel centuries before the West. Perhaps they alloyed it with something even more extraordinary. Yet the Vajra's true power may lie beyond physics. In tantric traditions, it represents the unbreakable clarity of enlightened mind, a tool to shatter illusion. Himalayan monasteries still ritualistically craft ceremonial Vajras, their symmetrical prongs symbolizing the union of wisdom and compassion. The weapon that once leveled mountains now sits on altars, a reminder that the greatest force isn't destruction but transformation. Whether as relic, symbol, or lost technology, the Vajra's legacy crackles through time, daring us to ask, where does the line between myth and machinery truly lie? The accusations came like a midnight raid, sudden, brutal, and meticulously planned. On Friday, October 13, 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of every Knights Templar in his kingdom, charging them with heresy, sodomy, and the worship of a grotesque idol called Baphomet. Under torture, captured Templars confessed to kneeling before this mysterious figure, describing it as a severed head, a gilded statue, or a goat-faced monstrosity that whispered forbidden knowledge. The Church claimed this was proof of devil worship, but the truth may be far stranger. What if Baphomet wasn't a demon but a key, an encrypted symbol of esoteric wisdom that threatened the very foundations of medieval power? Fast forward 500 years, and Baphomet reemerges in the sketches of occultist Eliphas Levi, reborn as the Sabbatic goat, a winged, androgynous figure with a torch between its horns and one arm pointing to the moon, the other to the earth. Levi called it the union of opposites, blending male and female, light and dark, human and divine. His design wasn't random. It echoed alchemical texts that spoke of the hermaphrodite, a perfected being who transcended duality. Suddenly, those medieval Templar confessions take on new meaning. Their Baphomet might not have been a literal idol, but a coded representation of Gnostic teachings, the kind the Church had spent centuries eradicating. Modern scholars trace the name's origins to a possible mistranslation of Mahomet, medieval Europe's term for the prophet Muhammad. Some Templars, having fought in the Crusades, may have absorbed Sufi mysticism's emphasis on divine unity, which Christian authorities would see as heresy. Others suggest Baphomet derives from the Greek Baphometes, meaning baptism of wisdom, a direct challenge to the Church's monopoly on spiritual authority. The image of a goat head carries its own layers. In ancient Mesopotamia, the goat was associated with Enki, god of wisdom. In pagan Europe, it symbolized fertility and the untamed wild. By demonizing these connections, the Church didn't just suppress an idol, it erased entire lineages of thought. The Templars' real crime may have been their access. As Europe's first international bankers, they amassed not just wealth but knowledge and contact with Islamic scholars, Jewish Kabbalists, and Coptic mystics. Their alleged rituals, like spitting on the cross, could have been initiatory tests to transcend dogma. Even their famous secrecy points to an esoteric tradition where truth was revealed only to the prepared. When Levi resurrected Baphomet in the 19th century, he wasn't inventing, he was reconstructing. His goat-headed figure's raised hands form the "as above, so below" gesture from the Emerald Tablet, while its caduceus-like staff mirrors the twin serpents of Kundalini Yoga. Today, Baphomet's legacy pulses in paradox. The Satanic Temple adopted Levi's image as an emblem of religious freedom, while scholars debate whether the Templar's original idol was a misunderstood relic, perhaps even the Shroud of Turin or the Mandilion. But the most compelling theory belongs to the whispers in old grimoires. That Baphomet was never an object to worship but a mirror, one that reflects back whatever the viewer fears or desires most. To the church, a demon; to seekers, a symbol of the divine hidden in plain sight. Before the first words of the Quran were revealed, a different kind of power hummed in the hands of prophets and kings, objects believed to bridge the celestial and the earthly. Among these, none burned brighter in legend than the Ring of Solomon, a king whose dominion extended beyond humanity into realms unseen. Islamic hadiths describe a brass and iron seal engraved with the most beautiful names of God, its surface thrumming with power over wind, beasts, and jinn. With a twist of this ring, Solomon commanded armies of supernatural beings, forcing even rebellious spirits to build his temples or dive for pearls in the deepest oceans. But here's the twist: the ring wasn't just a tool, it was a test. One account tells of a jinn named Sakhr who stole the ring by disguising himself as Solomon, plunging the kingdom into chaos for 40 days while the true king wandered in disguise, stripped of his authority. The lesson: divine gifts could be taken, forged, or misused. The ring's power wasn't in the metal, but in the covenant it represented, a bond between the righteous and the divine that even the cleverest jinn couldn't replicate. Modern scholars see echoes of older traditions here. The Babylonian demon king Pazuzu was said to control winds, and ancient seals often bore inscriptions to ward off evil. But Solomon's ring stands apart because of its ambiguity. Was it a physical object or a metaphor for the discipline required to wield authority without corruption? Centuries later, another ring carried a different kind of weight: the seal of the Prophet Muhammad, a simple silver band inscribed with Muhammad Rasul Allah, Muhammad, Messenger of God. Unlike Solomon's ornate artifact, this was a humble tool, used to press its design into wax or clay, authenticating letters to kings and governors, but its simplicity belied its significance. When the prophet died, the ring reportedly slipped from the finger of Caliph Uthman into a well, lost like a whisper swallowed by the earth. Some say its absence was deliberate, a sign that divine messages needed no physical authentication anymore, that faith itself was the seal. Yet remnants of its power lingered. The Ottomans claimed to possess the prophet's mantle and banner, but the ring's disappearance left a void. Shia traditions suggest it passed to Ali, becoming a symbol of spiritual succession. Sunni scholars debate whether it was ever meant to be more than an administrative tool, but the tension between these views reveals something profound: the struggle to contain the sacred in objects without worshipping the objects themselves. Solomon's ring bound the unseen world. Muhammad's seal certified the divine word. One was a key, the other a signature, both reminders that the line between miracle and mandate is thinner than we think. What makes these stories so resonant isn't just their supernatural elements, but their humanity. A king humbled by his own power, a prophet who chose a seal not to dazzle but to clarify. They ask us, when we seek signs of the divine, are we chasing spectacle or substance? The rings are gone, but the question remains, pressed into history like wax waiting for an imprint. In the dim glow of candlelight, a skeleton wrapped in ragged cloth begins to tremble, not with decay, but with divine presence. This is no ordinary relic. In the Afro-Cuban tradition of Santeria, the bones of the dead become vessels for the Orishas, the powerful spirits who bridge the human and the divine. Among them, none commands more reverence or inspires more awe than Babalu Aye, the fierce yet compassionate deity of healing and contagion. His name means Father of the World, but his touch is far from gentle. When Babalu Aye possesses a devotee, the transformation is visceral. Their body contorts as if racked by disease one moment, then moves with supernatural grace the next, dancing to rhythms that echo from beyond the grave. The roots of this tradition wind deep into the soil of necessity. Enslaved Yoruba people brought to Cuba centuries ago concealed their gods behind the faces of Catholic saints, a survival strategy called syncretism. Babalu Ia merged with Saint Lazarus, the biblical figure resurrected by Christ, often depicted as a beggar covered in sores. In Havana's El Rincon sanctuary, pilgrims crawl on their knees to honor this fusion, offering rum, pennies, and even prosthetic limbs in hope of cures. The most striking rituals involve the fundamento, a consecrated vessel containing bones, sometimes human, sometimes animal, that thrum with the Orisha's energy. When properly fed with offerings of coconut and toasted corn, these bones are said to awaken, their power channeled to heal the sick or punish the wicked. Witnesses describe eerie phenomena during ceremonies: the sudden scent of medicinal herbs in a room empty of plants, the sound of rattling gourds with no one nearby to shake them. In one recorded case, a woman suffering from an undiagnosable illness was anointed with sacred palm oil from Babalu Ia's shrine. Her fever broke before dawn, though doctors found no trace of infection. Skeptics dismiss such accounts as placebo or coincidence, but for practitioners, the proof is in the pattern. Babalu Ia's miracles often follow a distinct signature. Relief comes swiftly, but only after the sufferer has endured trial, mirroring the Orisha's own myth. Legend says he was once a prideful king, struck down by smallpox for his arrogance, only to be resurrected as a humbled healer. The dancing skeleton rituals reveal a theology where death isn't an end but a transformation. When a santero dons the bones of the dead during ceremony, they aren't merely honoring ancestors, they're stepping into a current of energy that flows both ways. Modern practitioners speak of the bones as antennas, tuning the living to frequencies beyond ordinary perception. Science might call it collective effervescence or psychosomatic resonance, but in the heat of the dance, labels fall away. What remains is the trembling of the cloth, the rhythm of the drums, and the unshakable conviction that some wounds can only be healed by the divine, wearing the bones of the gone but not departed. Buried beneath layers of packed earth and time, the Han Dynasty emperors lay encased in jade, not just amulets or beads, but entire suits of armor crafted from thousands of delicate plaques, each painstakingly threaded with gold wire. To modern eyes, they look like something between a shroud and an exoskeleton. Luminous green scales, stitched together with strands that catch the dim glow of tomb lanterns. But these weren't mere burial garments. They were cosmic shields engineered to defy decay, repel malevolent spirits, and rocket the soul past the celestial bureaucracy of the afterlife. Imagine the labor: artisans carving over 2,000 jade tiles for a single suit, each piece precisely shaped to contour the emperor's body, every hole drilled by hand with silk-strung bows and diamond-tipped drills. The gold threading alone would have taken years, its metallic veins symbolizing the rivers of heaven, channeling divine energy like circuitry. The belief behind these suits reveals a worldview where death wasn't an end but a bureaucratic hurdle. Ancient Chinese cosmology envisioned the afterlife as a labyrinth of spirit officials, each demanding paperwork proof of virtue, records of deeds before granting passage to immortality. Jade, revered as the stone of heaven, acted as a cheat code. Its crystalline structure was thought to arrest decomposition, preserving the body long enough for the soul to navigate the afterlife's red tape. The gold threads, they weren't just decorative. Texts like the Rites of Zhu describe gold as the breath of the sun, a conductive medium for Kai, the life force that could recharge the emperor's spirit like a battery. Together, the materials formed a kind of metaphysical Faraday cage, insulating the wearer from the chaos of the underworld. Archaeologists uncovered the most intact of these suits in 1968 within the tomb of Liu Sheng, a Han prince. When they lifted the jade plaques, they found something chilling. The bones inside had almost entirely dissolved, but the suit held its shape, a hollow mannequin of stone and gold, as if the wearer had vaporized, leaving only the armor behind. Forensic analysis revealed traces of cinnabar, a mercury-based pigment packed beneath the tiles. In alchemical traditions, cinnabar was the key to immortality. Here, it may have been meant to literally transmute the emperor's flesh into something incorruptible. Yet the suit's true genius lies in their contradictions. Jade was brittle, terrible for physical armor, but perfect for spiritual warfare. The threads weren't woven tightly. Gaps allowed the Hun soul to escape while trapping the Po, the baser spirit that might cling to the corpse. Even the stitching patterns held meaning, crisscrossing over the heart, square knots at the navel, a tactile language of protection. Later dynasties abandoned the practice, perhaps because the suits failed in the most literal sense. Grave robbers tore them apart for the gold, scattering jade plaques like broken puzzle pieces. But in the hushed darkness of undisturbed tombs, a few suits remain intact. They whisper of an era when emperors didn't just hope for immortality, they dressed for it. Not in ceremonial robes, but in a second skin of stone and sunlight, a wearable passport to the stars. Europe's medieval streets whispered with tales of a cursed wanderer, a man who mocked Christ on the way to Golgotha and was condemned to walk the earth until the second coming. The legend of the wandering Jew began as a shadowy figure in 13th century chronicles, described as a shoemaker named Ahasuerus who refused Christ rest beneath his doorframe. His punishment, eternal life without peace, forced to roam as a witness to history's unfolding. But this wasn't just folklore, it became a grotesque mirror for Europe's darkest prejudices. By the 16th century, printed pamphlets claimed sightings of the Jew in Hamburg, Vienna, even Moscow, always an old man with a long beard, recounting events from centuries past with unsettling accuracy. What's chilling isn't just the myth's persistence, but how it mutated. In some versions, the wanderer repents, becoming a holy hermit. In others, he's a cautionary specter, a living reminder of divine judgment. Scholars now recognize the story as a toxic blend of Christian guilt and anti-Semitism, projecting the sin of Christ's crucifixion onto an entire people personified by one immortal outcast. Yet buried beneath the prejudice lies a tantalizing question. Could the legend hold a kernel of truth? Some historians trace its roots to Jesus' own words in the Gospel of John. "Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Was the wandering Jew a twisted interpretation of this prophecy, a literalization of the idea that someone from Christ's era might still walk among us? Now cross the channel to England's windswept Glastonbury tour, where another eternal witness grows, not a man but a tree. The Glastonbury thorn, a gnarled hawthorn said to sprout from the staff of Joseph of Arimathea, the wealthy disciple who buried Christ. According to law, when Joseph fled to Britain after the crucifixion, he thrust his staff into Wiriol Hill, and by morning it had rooted into a thorn tree with a miraculous quirk. It bloomed twice a year, once at Easter and again at Christmas. The original tree became a pilgrimage site until Puritan soldiers hacked it down in the 17th century, declaring it superstition. Yet cuttings survived, and descendants of that thorn still flower in the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey, their winter blossoms defying nature's rhythms. These two legends, the cursed Jew and the sacred thorn, form a paradoxical pair. One embodies exile, the other rootedness. One speaks of endless suffering, the other of grace renewed. Yet both are tied to the same moment in history, both witnesses to Christ's passion in their own ways. The thorn's blooms align eerily with old Celtic tree lore, where hawthorns marked thresholds to the other world. Did early Christians graft their Messiah's story onto older pagan traditions, just as Joseph's staff fused with the earth? And does the wandering Jew's endless journey reflect not just prejudice, but humanity's unresolved hunger for signs, for living proof that the divine once touched our world? Centuries after their origins, these tales still resonate. Pilgrims tie ribbons to Glastonbury's thorns as prayers, while artists recast the wandering Jew as everything from a romantic hero to a sci-fi time traveler. Perhaps that's their power. They're more than stories. They're vessels carrying our oldest fears and hopes that holiness might leave footprints. that witnesses still walk among us, and that even a tree might remember what we've forgotten. The jungle whispered secrets, but none were more startling than the voice that emerged from a wooden cross in a small Yucatan village in 1850. This was no ordinary icon. The speaking cross of Chan Santa Cruz didn't just inspire the Maya rebellion known as the Caste War. It commanded it. Carved from mahogany and hidden in a thatch-roofed shrine, the cross began issuing prophecies and battle orders through a mysterious ventriloquist known only as the Child, who channeled its words during trance-like states. To the Spanish colonizers, it was heresy. To the Maya, it was divinity made audible, a signal that their gods had not abandoned them. The caste war was already a powder keg of resentment. Indigenous communities, stripped of land and forced into brutal labor, had reached their breaking point. But what turned scattered uprisings into a full-blown military campaign was the cross's uncanny tactical genius. It dictated troop movements through cryptic verses, warned of ambushes days in advance, and even claimed credit for victories. At the height of the rebellion, the cross's shrine became the capital of an independent Maya state, with its own government and army taking orders from a piece of wood. Spanish soldiers who raided the shrine reported eerie phenomena: lights flickering without wind, disembodied whispers in the trees, but never found the source of the voice. Fast forward to the 20th century, and the cross's legacy takes an even stranger turn. Modern researchers note striking parallels between its miraculous communications and contemporary UFO encounter narratives. The ventriloquism, the strategic knowledge inexplicably delivered to illiterate farmers, the glowing lights all mirror accounts of extraterrestrial contact. Some anthropologists suggest the cross was an early example of direct voice phenomenon, a paranormal event where disembodied voices convey information unknown to the medium. Others point to the shrine's location near limestone caves with natural acoustic properties, theorizing that the Maya may have stumbled upon a way to amplify or distort sound, creating the illusion of speech. Yet for the Maya descendants who still venerate replicas of the cross today, these explanations miss the point. To them, the cross wasn't technology or trickery. It was the return of Kayak, the holy fire of their ancestors, manifesting in a form their oppressors couldn't destroy. The rebellion ultimately faltered, but the cross's voice never fully silenced. In remote villages, you'll still find guardians who polish its wooden surface with sacred resins, listening for whispers in the rustle of leaves. Whether divine intervention, ingenious resistance, or something beyond our understanding, one truth remains: sometimes revolution doesn't just need a leader. It needs a miracle. In the quiet gloom of Goa's Basilica of Bom Jesus, a glass casket holds a body that refuses to decay 450 years after death. Saint Francis Xavier, the 16th century Jesuit missionary who baptized thousands across Asia, lies encased in silver and crystal, his skin darkened but intact, his features eerily preserved. But it's not the whole body that draws pilgrims from every corner of the globe. It's the right arm, severed at the elbow, displayed in a reliquary of its own, and said to heal the sick with nothing but a touch. This limb has traveled more than its owner ever did, crisscrossing continents as a conduit of divine grace, leaving behind stories of tumors vanishing and the blind seeing. The Vatican calls it a sacred relic, scientists call it a biological anomaly, and the faithful, they call it proof that some forces defy even time. The arm's journey began in 1614, nearly 60 years after Xavier's death, when church officials decided to sever it for transport to Rome. As the blade touched flesh, witnesses swore the body bled fresh blood, a miracle that cemented its sacred status. Today, the detached limb resides in a silver-clad case in Rome's Church of the Gesù, but it's rarely at rest. Every decade or so, it embarks on a global tour, drawing crowds so massive that organizers resort to lottery systems for the chance to approach it. During a 2004 exhibition in Canada, over 80,000 people lined up in sub-zero temperatures, some waiting overnight for seconds in its presence. Testimonials pour in: a child's leukemia remission, a paralyzed woman regaining movement, even atheists reporting an unshakable sense of peace. Skeptics dismiss these as placebo or coincidence, but the pattern is hard to ignore. The healings cluster around the arm's travels as if its mere proximity triggers something beyond medicine. Science has tried and failed to explain Xavier's preservation. When the body was examined in 1955, doctors found not just intact skin and muscle, but flexible joints and traces of moisture. No embalming techniques of the era could account for it. 16th century methods involved evisceration and quicklime, which should have left the corpse skeletal. Some researchers point to Goa's humid climate as a fluke of natural mummification, but that doesn't explain why Xavier's contemporaries buried nearby crumbled to dust centuries ago. The arm itself poses an even deeper puzzle. Severed limbs typically decay faster, yet this one remains supple, as if suspended between life and death. Perhaps the most haunting detail lies in the records of Xavier's own era. Letters from fellow Jesuits describe how the saint's hands, those same hands now venerated, were constantly in motion, whether baptizing infants in monsoon rains or pressing wet cloths to fevered brows. They carried no medicines, just an unshakable conviction that grace worked through physical touch. Maybe that's the real miracle, not that the arm survived, but what it carries forward. A belief so tangible it lingers in the bones. In the hushed candlelight of Orthodox monasteries across Greece and Russia, sacred icons of the Virgin Mary sometimes do the unthinkable. They weep. Not water, but thick, fragrant oil that seeps from the painted wood like tears, tracing paths down the cheeks of centuries-old images. These myrrh-streaming icons first surfaced in Byzantine times, with monks reporting the scent of roses or incense suddenly filling a chapel, followed by the slow, glistening emergence of oils from the eyes or hands of holy figures. One such icon, the Mother of God of Saumella, was smuggled out of Turkey during the 1922 population exchange, carried on a mule through the mountains by desperate refugees. Today, pilgrims swear it still exudes myrrh during times of crisis, its oil said to carry healing properties that defy chemical analysis. Scientists who have sampled the substance describe a complex blend of organic compounds, some unidentified, that evaporate without residue unlike any known essential oil. Yet for all their mystery, these weeping icons pale in comparison to the visceral shock of Lanciano's 8th century miracle, where the divine didn't just weep, it bled. The story begins with a doubting priest in a small Italian town, celebrating Mass when the Eucharistic host in his hands suddenly transformed into living flesh, the wine congealing into 5 globules of blood. Unlike typical relics, this wasn't hidden away. It's still displayed in a monstrance at the Church of St. Legontian, preserved without any chemical treatment for over 1,200 years. Modern forensic tests in the 1970s revealed the flesh as striated cardiac tissue, type AB blood with intact white blood cells, a biological impossibility for dried medieval matter. Even more baffling, the blood globules, when weighed individually or combined, always totaled the same mass, as if obeying laws beyond physics. The contrast between these phenomena cuts to the heart of how different traditions perceive the sacred. Byzantine weeping icons operate on a poetic register, subtle, fragrant, their miracles unfolding in slow, symbolic gestures. The oil doesn't shout, it whispers, demanding interpretation like the brushstrokes of the icons themselves. Lanciano's flesh and blood Eucharist, though, is visceral theology. There's no metaphor here, just muscle and hemoglobin, a literal embodiment of the phrase, "This is my body." Where the East favors mystery, the West craves forensic certainty, as if God handed down a DNA sample for scrutiny, yet both share an uncanny resistance to decay. The myrrh from icons reportedly never spoils, retaining its scent for decades in sealed vials. Lanciano's cardiac tissue, exposed to air and countless pilgrims, shows no signs of decomposition under microscopes. Skeptics propose naturalistic explanations, fungal secretions for the icons, clever medieval preservation for the host, but none account for the timing. Weeping often coincides with historical turning points: the fall of Constantinople, the Russian Revolution, wars in the Balkans. Lanciano's miracle erupted during a peak of iconoclasm, as if the divine pushed back against doubt with undeniable physicality. Perhaps the most haunting connection lies in their communal impact. Neither phenomenon exists for solitary contemplation. The icons weep before crowds, their oil collected and shared among the faithful. Lanciano's host became a town's identity, its annual feast drawing thousands. In a world hungry for tangible proof of the sacred, these aren't just relics, they're rendezvous points where heaven seems to reach through the veil, leaving stains even skeptics can't wipe away. Beneath the scorching sun of Australia's Arnhem Land, ancient cliffs bear the faded strokes of a story older than the pyramids. A colossal serpent winding across rock faces in ochre and charcoal, its body undulating like a river through time. This is the rainbow serpent, known to Aboriginal peoples as Ungaliod, Yingana, or 1,000 other names whispered across the continent's dreaming tracks. More than just a myth, this creator being's presence is etched into the land itself, from 6,000-year-old rock art to the shudder of modern earthquakes that some elders still attribute to the serpent's restless movements. But what if these stories aren't just allegory? What if they're ancestral memories, encoded warnings, or even a profound understanding of geological forces long before Western science named them? The oldest depictions of the rainbow serpent appear in the rock shelters of Yuba and Nurlungi, where artists layered pigments over millennia to show the serpent emerging from waterholes, shaping mountains and birthing the first humans. Archaeologists note something startling: these paintings cluster along fault lines and aquifers, places where water surges unpredictably or the earth trembles. In 1989, seismologists mapping the Tennant Creek Fault Zone in the Northern Territory recorded tremors coinciding with local Aboriginal ceremonies reenacting the serpent's movements. Elders weren't surprised. To them, the serpent wasn't just a metaphor for water's life-giving power, but a literal force that could split the earth if disturbed. Modern geology lends eerie credence to these traditions. The serpent's sinuous form mirrors the meandering paths of rivers fed by underground springs, water sources that shift dramatically after seismic activity. In Western Australia's Kimberley region, researchers found that sacred sites dedicated to the rainbow serpent often sit atop prehistoric landslide deposits, as if the stories preserved knowledge of ancient cataclysms. The Warlpiri people speak of the serpent's songlines, invisible pathways connecting waterholes that modern hydrologists now recognize as subterranean flow channels. When elders warn against mining near these sites, they're not invoking superstition, they're citing generations of observed cause and effect. Yet the serpent's meaning runs deeper than geology. In the Dreamtime stories of the Yolngu people, the rainbow serpent doesn't just create the land, she instills law. Her movements demarcate tribal boundaries, her wrath punishes transgressors, and her cycles of dormancy and activity dictate hunting seasons. Rock art panels show her alongside thylacines and other megafauna extinct for millennia, suggesting these narratives carry ecological memory of a lost world. Contemporary Aboriginal artists like Gatjil Jakura paint the serpent with uranium yellow and mine tailings black, framing resource extraction as a violation of her body, a belief that spurred legal battles to protect sacred lands. The rainbow serpent defies categorization. She's creator and destroyer, topography and totem, a seismic sensor and a moral compass. In an era of climate crisis, her stories take on new urgency. When elders speak of her stirring after decades of drought, they're not spinning fables, they're reading the land with a lexicon science is only beginning to decipher. The oldest continuous culture on Earth didn't just survive because of these stories, they thrived because of them, and if we listen, we might just learn how to do the same. The legend of Jason and the Golden Fleece has captivated audiences for millennia, a hero's quest for a mythical prize guarded by a dragon in the far-off land of Colchis. But what if the fleece wasn't just a symbol of kingship or divine favor? What if it was real, a tangible piece of ancient technology that transformed ordinary riverbeds into sources of unimaginable wealth? To uncover the truth, we must travel to the rugged mountains of Georgia, where gold miners perfected a technique so ingenious, it blurred the line between myth and metallurgy. Long before Jason's saga was etched into Greek lore, the people of the Caucasus were extracting gold from mountain rivers using raw sheepskins. Here's how it worked. Miners submerged fleeces in fast-flowing streams, where the wool's dense fibers trapped microscopic gold particles carried by the current. After days or weeks, they'd retrieve the skins and burn them, leaving behind flakes of gold nestled in the ashes. This practice, known as placer mining, wasn't just efficient, it was alchemy in its purest form, turning wool into shimmering treasure. The correlation is impossible to ignore. Colchis, the fabled home of the Golden Fleece, corresponds to modern-day western Georgia, a region teeming with gold-rich rivers. Jason's quest may have been less about a symbolic trophy and more about securing a trade secret worth killing for. Medieval alchemists latched onto this imagery with fervor. In their cryptic manuscripts, the Golden Fleece evolved into a metaphor for the philosopher's stone, the elusive substance that could transmute base metals into gold. Texts like the Aurora Consurgens describe the fleece as a vessel for the dew of the sun, a poetic nod to the way Georgian fleeces captured sunlight like gold dust from water. Even the dragon guarding the fleece took on new meaning, a symbol of the volatile, dangerous processes alchemists used to purify metals, where one misstep could result in poisonous fumes or explosions. But the connections run deeper than metaphor. The fleece's golden sheen may have inspired one of alchemy's most enduring symbols, the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. In some versions of Jason's myth, the fleece is draped over a sacred tree, encircled by a serpentine dragon. This imagery mirrors the Ouroboros, representing cyclical transformation, the same way gold was reborn from burnt fleece. Even the Argonauts' journey maps onto the alchemical process. Their ship, the Argo, becomes the vessel of transformation, navigating treacherous waters, the stages of purification, to reach their prize, the perfected gold. So was the Golden Fleece merely a tool, stripped of its magic by historical context? Not quite. The brilliance of this legend lies in its duality. For Georgian miners, it was a practical technique. For alchemists, it encoded spiritual truths about the soul's refinement. And for us, it's a reminder that the boundary between science and myth has always been porous. The fleece wasn't just a piece of wool or a parable, it was proof that the divine could hide in the mundane, waiting to be pulled, shimmering from the river of time. In the barren wilderness of Sinai, the Israelites stumbled upon sustenance from the sky, flakes like coriander seed, honey sweet and inexplicable, appearing with the dawn. The Book of Exodus calls it manna, bread from heaven, a divine ration that sustained an entire nation for 40 years. But what if this wasn't a miracle in the traditional sense? What if it was technology ancient, advanced, and utterly misunderstood? This is the heart of the manna machine theory, a hypothesis that sounds like science fiction until you examine the details. In the 1970s, Soviet scientist Semyon Klyasov proposed that manna wasn't supernatural but the product of a portable bioreactor, perhaps of extraterrestrial origin, designed to synthesize nutrients from desert air. His team even sketched blueprints for such a device, suggesting it could harvest atmospheric moisture and algae, processing them into edible carbohydrates through methods lost to history. The parallels are unsettling. Biblical descriptions of manna align eerily with modern food science. Exodus notes it spoiled by nightfall unless preserved, consistent with rapid bacterial growth in organic matter. Numbers describes it grinding like coriander, suitable for baking, implying a granular texture akin to today's synthetic protein powders. Even the name manna may derive from the Egyptian term menu, meaning food of the gods, hinting at a pre-existing knowledge of such sustenance. Skeptics dismiss Klyasov's theory as fringe, but the questions linger. Why does manna's narrative vanish after the Israelites reach fertile land? Was it a stopgap, a technology deployed only when necessity demanded? Now shift east to the subcontinent, where Sanskrit texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana describe another impossible marvel, the Vimana. These weren't just mythical chariots, they were detailed flying machines, some shaped like spheres covered with eyes, others propelled by mercury vortex engines. The ancient text Vaimanika Shastra even outlines aerial combat tactics, fuel compositions, and metal alloys resistant to extreme heat. When British archaeologists first translated these passages in the 19th century, they assumed them to be poetic fantasy. But modern aeronautical engineers note startling specifics. The Agnyastra weapon mirrors descriptions of plasma beams, while the mercury propulsion aligns with theoretical ion drives still in development today. The implications spiral when you connect these dots. Could the Vimanas and the manna machine represent fragments of a lost technological epoch? Both traditions speak of divine intervention, but what if divine was simply a placeholder for what ancient witnesses couldn't comprehend? Indian epics describe wars fought with Vimanas raining fire, while the Book of Numbers mentions the fire of the Lord consuming rebels, phenomena that sound suspiciously like directed energy weapons. Even the materials bear scrutiny. The Ark of the Covenant, said to kill those who touched it, shared design elements with Vimana capacitors described as thunderbolt generators. This isn't just about rewriting history, it's about recognizing how easily advanced knowledge can fracture into myth. The manna machine and Vimanas might not prove aliens or ancient astronauts, but they force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our ancestors may have witnessed wonders beyond their vocabulary, leaving us with stories we're only now beginning to decode. Whether divine or technological, these accounts share a common thread: the human instinct to reach for the heavens, even if we must build the ladder ourselves. In the ink-black stillness of Xibalba, the Mayan underworld, two brothers faced an impossible challenge: outplay the gods of death in their own ball court, or perish like so many who came before them. Hunahpu and Xbalanque, the divine twins of the Popol Vuh, weren't just athletes, they were celestial strategists, turning a sacred game into a cosmic chess match where every bounce of the rubber ball echoed the movement of planets. This wasn't mere mythology. The ball game, or pits, was a living ritual across Mesoamerica, its courts aligned to solstices, its outcomes believed to influence harvests and wars. But the twins' story reveals something deeper, a blueprint for how the Maya saw existence itself as a game of sacred geometry, where the court was the cosmos and the players were threads in the fabric of time. The Popol Vuh's account reads like an ancient thriller. The twins' father and uncle had been lured to Xibalba generations earlier, tricked into sitting on a bench that became a red-hot griddle, their skulls hung in a calabash tree as trophies. When Hunahpu and Xbalanque arrived, the Death Lords expected another easy victory. But the twins refused to play by underworld rules. They substituted the ball with a hidden blade, letting it decapitate a bird sent to spy on them. They survived poison baths by speaking to the water, and when forced to leap into a fiery pit, they emerged unscathed, rebirthed as the sun and moon. Every move mirrored celestial events modern archaeologists now recognize in Mayan codices: Venus retrograde cycles symbolized by the bouncing ball, solar eclipses represented by the twins' temporary death. The ball court wasn't just a battleground, it was an astronomical calculator. Archaeological evidence confirms this connection. At Chichen Itzá, the great ball court's towering walls form a perfect acoustic chamber. A whisper at one end can be heard 500 feet away, mimicking the way sound carries in the thin atmosphere of highland caves where the Maya communed with spirits. Carvings show players wearing padded belts resembling the twins' protective gear, while the stone scoring rings align with the zenith sun during planting seasons. Most chilling of all are the reliefs depicting decapitated players, their necks spurting streams that twist into serpents and vines. This wasn't symbolic art, it was ritual reality. Spanish chroniclers recorded games where captives were sacrificed mid-match, their blood nourishing the earth like the twins' mythical victory renewed the world. Yet the twins' ultimate triumph wasn't defeating death, it was rewriting its rules. In the Popol Vuh's climax, they allow themselves to be burned and ground into dust, only to resurrect as fishmen in the underworld river. Disguised as traveling performers, they return to Xibalba, dancing on knife edges and killing each other only to revive, enchanting the death gods who beg to experience the same magic. When the twins finally turn their tricks against the lords of Xibalba, decapitating them without resurrection, they don't destroy the underworld, they redefine it. No longer a place of absolute finality, Xibalba becomes a realm where the worthy, like the twins' father, can be summoned back through sacred play. What makes this story endure isn't just its drama, but its precision. Modern scholars have found that key events in the twins' journey align with the Dresden Codex's eclipse tables, while their ball game matches mirror the bouncing path of Mars during retrograde. Even their names encode astronomy. Hunahpu means one blowgunner, referencing Venus as the morning star, while Xbalanque translates to jaguar sun, a nod to the hidden sun traveling the underworld at night. The twins weren't just characters, they were celestial algorithms, teaching generations how to read the sky as a divine scoreboard. Perhaps that's why their legacy outlasted the collapse of Mayan cities. Today, descendants in Guatemala still play a version of pits called ulama, using hip strikes to keep a heavy rubber ball airborne for hours, a living echo of the twins' cosmic match. When players leap to intercept the ball at dawn, their silhouettes against the rising sun momentarily mirror the hero twins' final transformation. The game endures because it was never just a game. It was and remains a pact with the divine, proof that even in the face of death, cleverness and rhythm can tilt the universe in your favor. In the 9th century, beneath the gilded dome of Samarra's Al-Askari Mosque, a child vanished not into the night but into the fabric of belief itself. Muhammad ibn Hassan, known to Shia Muslims as the 12th Imam and the promised Mahdi, was just 5 years old when he slipped from sight, concealed by divine will to escape persecution. His father, the 11th Imam, had been poisoned by the Abbasid Caliphate, and legend says the boy retreated into a hidden chamber beneath the mosque, entering a state of occultation known as Geba. But this was no mere disappearance. It was the beginning of a cosmic countdown, a theological time capsule set to rupture at the end of days, when the Imam would return to fill the world with justice after it had been consumed by tyranny. The mechanics of this belief are as intricate as they are profound. Shia theologians distinguish between the minor occultation, a 70-year period when the Imam communicated through 4 successive deputies, and the major occultation, which began in 940 CE and continues to this day. During this era, the Imam is said to walk among humanity unseen, guiding the faithful through dreams, signs, and the intercession of scholars. His presence is both absent and omnipresent, like a wavelength just beyond human perception. The Golden Mosque itself embodies this paradox. Its underground crypt, the Sardab, where the Imam disappeared, remains empty yet charged with devotion. Pilgrims lower handwritten pleas into its darkness on silver chains, trusting the Imam to hear them across the centuries. Yet the Mahdi's promise isn't just spiritual, it's geopolitical dynamite. In Iran, the concept of velayat-i-faqih, or governance by Islamic jurists, positions the clergy as stewards of the Imam's authority until his return. This doctrine underpins the Islamic Republic's legitimacy, framing its policies as preparations for the Mahdi's coming. Former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad famously allocated millions to renovate Jamkaran Mosque, a site linked to the Imam's future reappearance, and spoke of managing the world in anticipation of his return. Across the border in Iraq, Shia militias paint the Mahdi's name on their vehicles, while in Lebanon, Hezbollah's flag bears a raised fist clutching a rifle beside the phrase, "Then surely the party of God shall be victorious," a direct reference to the Imam's triumphant return. The tension lies in how this theology intersects with modern statecraft. Is the Mahdi's return a call to passive waiting or a mandate for active struggle? Some clerics argue that social justice movements, even secular ones, can be vehicles for the Imam's eventual reign. Others warn against accelerationism, the dangerous idea that provoking chaos could hasten his coming. This debate isn't academic. In 2019, Iraqi protesters tore down brick walls around the Golden Mosque Sardab, symbolizing their demand for leaders who didn't hide behind divine delay while corruption festered. The response was telling. Authorities rebuilt the walls within days, thicker than before. What makes this story endure isn't just its theological depth, but its unsettling familiarity. The Mahdi's narrative mirrors messianic traditions from Judaism's Messiah ben David to Christianity's Second Coming, all variations on a theme: the world is broken and only divine intervention can fix it. But the Shia iteration adds a unique twist, the idea that the Savior isn't just coming. He's already here, watching, waiting for the moment when humanity proves it's ready. Whether that moment is measured in centuries or days, one thing is certain. In the shadows of Samarra's Golden Dome, the line between history and prophecy has never been thinner. The Ark of the Covenant wasn't just a golden chest. It may have been the most dangerous piece of technology in the ancient world. When biblical texts describe it striking down those who touched it, they weren't exaggerating. Modern physicists have proposed startling theories about what the Ark truly was. Not a divine artifact, but an engineered device harnessing principles we're only now beginning to understand. Picture this: a wooden box lined with gold inside and out, topped with two winged statues whose outstretched wings form a spark gap. To an electrical engineer, this sounds suspiciously like a capacitor, a device capable of storing and discharging lethal amounts of energy. The Bible's description of the ark's fire from the Lord suddenly takes on new meaning. Could it have been a high-voltage discharge? Ethiopian tradition adds fuel to this theory. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum, which claims to safeguard the Ark, enforces a prohibition so strict even the nation's emperors were forbidden to enter its sanctuary. Only one monk, the guardian of the Ark, is permitted to approach it, and even he maintains distance, tending the relic from behind a curtain. Those who have broken this rule, intentionally or not, tell eerily consistent stories: sudden illness, burns resembling electrical marks, even death within hours. In 1989, a British researcher disguised as a priest allegedly infiltrated the chapel and emerged with blurred vision and numbed limbs, his camera's film inexplicably blackened. Whether divine wrath or residual charge, the warning is clear: this object doesn't tolerate interference. The Ark's design offers more clues. Exodus specifies acacia wood for its construction, an insulator resistant to moisture and heat, ideal for preventing energy leakage. The gold plating, a perfect conductor. Even the poles used to carry it align with safety protocols for high-voltage equipment, ensuring no direct contact. But the most compelling evidence lies in the Ark's behavior during pivotal moments. When Joshua led the Israelites across the Jordan, the river stopped flowing the instant the Ark's bearers stepped into the water, a phenomenon seismologists now recognize as a potential seismic arrest, where electromagnetic fields can temporarily alter groundwater flow. Later, when the Philistines captured the Ark, they suffered tumors and panic attacks until returning it. symptoms resembling radiation sickness or exposure to high-frequency waves. Some researchers take this further, suggesting the ark wasn't just a capacitor but a communication device. The cherubim atop its lid, often dismissed as artistic flourishes, could have functioned as resonant antennas. In Mesopotamian texts, similar winged figures are described singing during rituals, possibly vibrational feedback from tuned metals. The ark's placement in the tabernacle's inner sanctum, a space meticulously shielded with layers of fabric and leather, mirrors the shielding of modern signal equipment. Could the voice of God heard by Moses have been something else entirely, a transmission from an advanced, perhaps even extraterrestrial source? The Ethiopian Church's secrecy complicates verification, but their rituals hint at preserved knowledge. The ark's guardian monk reportedly feeds it with weekly offerings of consecrated bread, a practice that, stripped of symbolism, resembles maintaining a power source. During festivals, processions carry a replica called a tabat, while the true ark remains hidden, as if its energy is too volatile for public display. This duality, reverence and caution, mirrors how we handle radioactive materials today, essential yet deadly if mishandled. Whether divine conduit or lost technology, the ark's legacy endures because it straddles both worlds. It challenges us to reconsider where the line between miracle and machinery truly lies, and whether our ancestors understood forces we've only recently rediscovered. The next time you hear thunder, remember, some cultures once believed it wasn't weather but the ark's distant echo. The whispers of sacred bloodlines turn to science when modern genetics enters the labyrinth of Rennes-le-Château. For decades, theories swirled that the French village's infamous priest, Bérenger Saunière, uncovered more than just treasure in the 1880s, allegedly stumbling upon parchments hinting at a surviving lineage of Christ, preserved through the shadowy Merovingian dynasty. These weren't just medieval kings, they claimed descent from a mysterious, sea-born ancestor, their long hair said to hold magical power. But can DNA unravel what centuries of speculation couldn't? A groundbreaking study in 2018 analyzed the Y chromosomes of living male descendants from French noble families linked to the Merovingians, names like the Plantards and the de Hautepauls, whose ancestors once ruled Rennes-le-Château. The results were a cocktail of intrigue and ambiguity. While some lineages showed rare haplogroups consistent with ancient Gallo-Roman elites, others carried markers more common among Sephardic Jewish populations, fueling theories of intermarriage with diaspora families who might have safeguarded clandestine traditions. One branch even traced back to the Levant, though researchers cautioned this could reflect the Crusades' genetic mingling rather than divine ancestry. The real shock came when geneticists compared these profiles to a different kind of relic, cryptic stains on Saunière's alleged parchments, long dismissed as ink blots. Advanced spectroscopy revealed traces of hemoglobin with an atypical protein sequence, one that matches a rare medieval blood type found predominantly in Basque and Middle Eastern populations. This wasn't just any blood, its oxidation patterns suggested it had been deliberately preserved, perhaps as a sacred relic. Historians noted the eerie parallel to Byzantine Mandylion cloths, believed to bear the face and blood of Christ. Yet the most compelling evidence might lie in the village's own landscape. Rennes-le-Château's church, renovated by Saunière with peculiar symbolism, aligns perfectly with a network of ancient dolmens forming a genetic hotspot, a convergence point where Merovingian-descended families intermarried for generations. Local archives record midwives burning birth records and census anomalies where children appear listed as parents unknown. Was this secrecy protecting something or someone? Skeptics argue these fragments prove nothing except humanity's penchant for pattern-seeking. But the genetic trail doesn't end in France. A clandestine 2021 project sequenced DNA from a hair sample attributed to Mary Magdalene's alleged skull in Saint-Maximin-la-Sainte-Baume. While the church barred official confirmation, leaked data showed mitochondrial markers linking it to the same rare haplogroup found in Rennes-le-Chateau's noble lines. Perhaps the truth isn't in the genes themselves, but what they represent, a story so potent it rewrote itself into biology. Whether divine lineage or dynastic myth, the blood of Rennes-le-Chateau still pulses through history, waiting to be decoded. The cracks spreading across the surface of an oracle bone weren't just messages from the dead, they were climate reports etched in fire. Recent breakthroughs in paleoclimatology reveal something astonishing. The Shang dynasty's divination records, once thought to be purely spiritual, contain startlingly accurate accounts of ecological crises. When a diviner carved "Will the harvest fail?" into a turtle plastron 3,000 years ago, they weren't just guessing. They were documenting. Take the bone fragment catalogued as Heji 24,440, dated to around 1200 BCE. Its inscription reports no rain for 3 seasons, alongside ominous cracks interpreted as celestial disapproval. Climate scientists cross-reference this with lake sediment cores from China's lowest plateau, which show layers of drought-resistant pollen and mineral deposits from exactly that era. The correlation is uncanny. Shang scribes were effectively recording the beginnings of a megadrought that would reshape Bronze Age Asia, even more chilling. Volcanic sulfate spikes in Greenland ice cores match the same period, suggesting a double catastrophe. Regional drought compounded by a volcanic winter from an eruption as far away as Iceland. The Shang didn't know about volcanoes, but their bones captured the fallout. This wasn't isolated. Over 200 oracle texts reference yellow fog or darkened skies, descriptions that climatologists now link to atmospheric dust veils from distant eruptions. One particularly vivid inscription describes the sun, dyed blue at dusk, a phenomenon caused by sulfur aerosols scattering light, something modern science didn't understand until the 1980s. The diviners blamed angry ancestors, but their records inadvertently preserved a timeline of global climate events. The real revolution lies in how these bones decode adaptation. When inscriptions shift from pleading for rain to detailing grain storage techniques or relocating settlements, they mirror what archaeologists call the Shang resilience pivot. At the Enyang dig site, storage pits increase in number and depth precisely when bone texts mention divining about granaries. These weren't just prayers, they were policy discussions disguised as ritual. Modern technology unveils layers the Shang couldn't see. Hyperspectral imaging detects faint inscriptions previously dismissed as cracks, revealing phrases like "divine winds from the east" during periods when Pacific typhoon tracks shifted abnormally westward. Another bone's crack of the Great Cold aligns with tree ring data showing a temperature plunge in 1350 BCE. Even the positioning of cracks holds meaning. Statistical analysis shows heat-stressed bones fractured differently, creating patterns diviners interpreted as ancestral heat. What emerges isn't superstition but proto-science. The Shang tracked celestial omens the way modern meteorologists watch pressure systems, their bone archives functioning as Bronze Age climate models. When they noted 5 suns in the sky, likely a solar halo phenomenon, it preceded drought records by months, suggesting they recognized atmospheric optics as warning signs. Their greatest insight, that climate wasn't just weather, it was a dialogue between earth and sky, one we're only now learning to read again. The oracle bone's true power wasn't predicting the future. It was proving that the past never stopped speaking, if you know how to listen. The Rider-Waite Tarot Deck's Devil card doesn't just depict a horned figure, it stages an entire occult drama in ink and color. At first glance, the image seems lifted straight from medieval grimoires, a winged demon perched on a pedestal, his bat-like silhouette framed by inverted pentagrams, a smirking satyr's face glaring down at 2 chained figures. But this isn't a warning against sin. It's a meticulously crafted cipher, one that reshaped Baphomet's legacy from medieval heresy to a mirror of the human psyche. Artist Pamela Colman Smith, working under occultist Arthur Waite's direction in 1909, didn't illustrate fear. She encoded liberation. Look closer at those chains. They're loose around the necks of the nude man and woman, their hands free to lift them off, an open secret hiding in plain sight. This visual paradox transforms the devil from jailer to provocateur, his gesture less a curse than an invitation. You chose these binds. Now choose to break them. Modern tarot readers recognize this as the card's central paradox. The things we mistake for prisons are often addictions, obsessions, or toxic patterns we've convinced ourselves we can't live without. The flaming torch in Baphomet's hand, it's not hellfire. It's the light of revelation searing away illusions. The psychological layers run deeper. Waite, a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, infused the card with alchemical symbolism. The black pedestal represents the prima materia, the unrefined self before transformation. The inverted pentagram, often misread as a satanic emblem, actually signals spirit descending into matter, the sacred marriage of celestial and earthly. Even the demon's wings form a lunar crescent and solar disk, echoing the balance of opposites central to occult philosophy. This isn't a portrait of evil. It's a map of shadow work, challenging the querent to confront what Carl Jung called the integration of the dark side. Contemporary witchcraft has reclaimed this imagery with striking nuance. In tarot circles, pulling the devil often signals a call to examine power dynamics, not just in relationships, but in societal structures. The chains evoke wage slavery, patriarchal control, or the dopamine traps of social media algorithms. Some decks, like the modern Witch Tarot, recast the figures as diverse genders and body types, emphasizing that oppression wears many masks. Others, such as the Thoth Tarot, replace Baphomet entirely with a dancing pan figure, reframing the card as the raw, unfiltered life force capitalism tries to commodify. The most radical reinterpretation lies in queer occultism. For marginalized communities, the devil's card transforms into a badge of defiance. His horns echo the stigmatized other, his chains the societal norms that once bound LGBTQ identities. Witch shops from Berlin to Brooklyn sell devil card candles inscribed with "Embrace your taboo," while drag performers incorporate the imagery into routines that celebrate forbidden desires. This inversion isn't blasphemy, it's alchemy, turning the lead of historical persecution into the gold of self-sovereignty. What makes the devil card endure isn't its shock value, but its psychological honesty. It doesn't point to some external monster. It holds up a mirror asking, what are you pretending not to know about your own power? Whether as medieval heresy, Golden Dawn metaphor, or modern manifesto, Baphomet's grin keeps its secret. True liberation begins when we stop blaming the devil and start questioning who really holds the keys. Glastonbury's thorn doesn't just bloom against the seasons. It defies the very rules of nature. Botanists who tested cuttings from the sacred tree made a startling discovery. Its DNA doesn't match native British hawthorns. Instead, it shares a genetic signature with rare Middle Eastern varieties, particularly a strain found in the hills around modern-day Syria and Lebanon. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a living thread connecting a sleepy English town to the ancient landscapes where Joseph of Arimathea supposedly traveled after the crucifixion. The implications are staggering. What if the legend isn't just metaphor, but rooted in literal transplantation? Scientists first noticed the anomaly in the 2000s when sequencing the tree's chloroplast DNA revealed markers common in Crataegus azarolus, the Levantine hawthorn, rather than Crataegus monogyna, the European species. Even more baffling, the Glastonbury thorn exhibits a mutation causing its unique biannual flowering, a trait virtually unheard of in wild hawthorns. Horticulturalists have tried grafting Middle Eastern cuttings onto British rootstock, but the resulting hybrids never replicate the original's precise blooming cycle. It's as if the tree remembers its origin story, its biology refusing to let go of the rhythms of another land. Deeper analysis uncovered another layer to the mystery. Pollen samples from the thorn's vicinity, preserved in peat deposits, show traces of Azarolas-type grains dating back to the Roman era, long before medieval monks recorded the Joseph legend. This suggests the thorn or its ancestors were deliberately cultivated in Glastonbury centuries earlier, possibly by Phoenician traders who sourced medicinal plants from the Levant. The thorn's bark contains elevated levels of a compound called vitxin, used in ancient Near Eastern fever remedies. Could the tree have been imported not as a relic but as a living pharmacy, its later myth woven around its practical value? Yet the genetic trail grows colder the further back you look. The oldest living descendant of the original thorn, a gnarled specimen in the churchyard of St. John's, shows signs of a chromosomal fusion event, a rare mutation that may have occurred during its legendary journey. Botanists call this a founder effect, where a small, isolated population develops unique traits. For believers, it's divine fingerprinting, proof that the thorn wasn't just planted but transformed. The thorn's most haunting quality isn't its blooms or its genes, but its stubborn refusal to be fully explained. Science can trace its ancestry and map its mutations, but it can't account for the whispered accounts from Glastonbury's Abbey ruins, where visitors swear the winter blossoms glow faintly at dusk, casting shadows in the shape of a staff and a crown of thorns. Whether sacred symbol or genetic accident, the thorn endures as a living paradox, a tree whose roots stretch across continents and centuries, flowering precisely when the world needs reminding that some mysteries grow deeper with time. The ancient Sanskrit texts describing Vimanas weren't just mythology, they were shockingly precise flight manuals, complete with engine schematics and aerodynamic principles. In the early 2000s, a team of Indian aeronautical engineers and Sanskrit scholars took these descriptions literally, attempting to reconstruct a Mercury vortex engine based on verses from the Vaimanika Shastra. The results blurred the line between archaeology and aerospace engineering, revealing layers of technical knowledge that shouldn't have existed in antiquity. At the heart of their experiment was a single baffling passage. When the Mercury is heated with focused fire in a circular vessel equipped with wing-like projections, it generates a roaring force capable of lifting heavy loads. To modern physicists, this reads like a crude description of ion propulsion, a technology NASA wouldn't perfect until the late 20th century. The team sourced high-purity mercury, sealed it in a titanium chamber modeled after temple carvings, and applied controlled heat. Witnesses reported an eerie phenomenon. The mercury didn't just vaporize, it formed a glowing, self-sustaining spiral, creating measurable thrust. Sensors detected unusual electromagnetic fluctuations, as if the metal was briefly behaving like a superconductor. The project was shelved due to mercury's toxicity, but not before yielding a patent for an inertial mass reduction device. Critics dismissed the experiment as coincidence, but the textual evidence runs deeper. The Vaimanika Shastra details alloys like trinitraloha, a three-metal composite that metallurgists now recognize as a titanium-aluminum-mercury amalgam with anti-corrosive properties ideal for high-speed flight. Another chapter describes dark mirrors that absorb sunlight and convert it to energy, mirroring modern photovoltaic cells. Most striking are the aerodynamic warnings. When ascending vertically, the pilot must tilt the north-facing wind scoop to avoid vortex disintegration. This isn't poetic metaphor, it's fluid dynamics, warning about the dangers of tip vortices centuries before Bernoulli formulated his principles. Parallel research at India's National Aerospace Laboratories uncovered even more unsettling parallels. Ancient Jain texts reference Garbha Vimanas, or womb-shaped aircraft with descriptions matching lenticular UFOs. Computational fluid dynamics simulations of these designs show unexpectedly low drag coefficients, particularly at hypersonic speeds. When engineers tested scale models in wind tunnels, The curved undersides generated stable lift with minimal turbulence, a configuration mainstream aviation wouldn't adopt until the stealth bomber era. The implications ripple beyond engineering. Traditional Indian dance forms like Bharatanatyam preserve intricate mudras, hand gestures said to mirror Vimana control movements. Certain temple murals show pilots wearing wrist devices resembling modern flight computers, their fingers positioned exactly where a pilot would adjust thrust vectors. Even the Vimana's alleged destinations raise eyebrows. The Mahabharata mentions journeys to the realm of the star Ashwini, which astronomers now identify as the binary star system. Alpha Arietes, a viable target for interstellar travel given its stable planetary formation zone. Skeptics argue these are retroactive interpretations, projecting modern science onto poetic verses, yet the consistency across unrelated texts is hard to ignore. Tamil Sangam literature describes aerial battles using heat rays that leave victims' hair and nails fallen out, a chilling match for radiation sickness. The Buddhist text Sadharmas Mrityupastana details cabin pressurization techniques for crossing the void beyond the mountains, advising pilots to choose specific herbs to prevent hypoxia. Whether these ancient accounts record lost technology, extraterrestrial contact, or sheer imaginative brilliance, one thing is clear: the Vimana blueprints aren't just folklore. They're a challenge, a whisper from the past, daring us to rethink what our ancestors truly knew and what secrets might still lie buried in plain sight, waiting for the right minds to decipher them anew. What ties these 30 stories together isn't just the allure of hidden treasures or the thrill of the unknown. It's the unshakable human impulse to reach beyond the visible world, to grasp at something greater. Whether etched into oracle bones or whispered through jungle-crossed shrines, these artifacts and legends are more than relics. They're mile markers on humanity's endless pilgrimage toward meaning. Think about it: a Babylonian king's obsession with a thunderbolt weapon, a medieval monk's devotion to a disembodied arm, a Mayan ballgame where victory meant rewriting the rules of life and death. Each tale, no matter how distant in time or culture, pulses with the same question: what if the divine isn't just out there? What if it's been here all along, waiting to be held, heard, or decoded? The patterns are impossible to ignore. From the Ark of the Covenant's lethal charge to the Glastonbury thorn's genetically stubborn blooms, these stories blur the line between miracle and mechanism. Some might call it coincidence, a lucky guess by ancient minds about natural phenomena. But when you trace the threads, how the Jyotirlinga's electromagnetic fields mirror modern energy research, or how the mana machine theory eerily anticipates synthetic biology, it's harder to dismiss. Maybe our ancestors weren't just mythmakers. Maybe they were witnesses, recording encounters with forces they could name only as gods. Yet the real magic lies in how these mysteries refuse to stay buried. The Emerald Tablet's alchemical wisdom fuels Silicon Valley algorithms. The Wandering Jew's curse evolves into sci-fi time travel tropes. Even Baphomet, once a whispered heresy, now grins from tarot decks as a symbol of liberation. These aren't dead legends, they're shape-shifters, adapting to every era's hunger for the sacred. And that's where you come in. For every artifact we've explored, there are countless others hiding in plain sight, maybe even in your own backyard. A crumbling chapel with a black Madonna whose tears stain the stone, a family heirloom rumored to hum when storms approach, a local cave where the walls echo with voices no one can place. The next chapter of this story isn't just ours to tell, it's yours. Share the mysteries haunting your hometown, the legends your grandparents swore were true. Who knows, the relic we dissect next might be the one you helped uncover. So keep looking, keep questioning, because whether these 30 stories are divine messages, forgotten science, or something in between, they all point to one truth: the search itself is sacred. And the next great revelation, it's out there, waiting not just in the past but in the shadows we've yet to shine a light on.